So, I assume you saw my old video? Yeah, I have no idea how that happened either. Though, that being said, maybe one good video deserves another, and what better way to do that than look at the comments from before, with the addition of doing some revision of the channels in question, if not going further. Considering the overall amount though, I won't be going one by one on each comment because it would be redundant in some cases where I could otherwise clump them together. That or it's someone pointing out what the chapters are. If I don't end up covering something in a certain section, then I can always tack it on as another chapter where need be towards the end of the video, so no worries there if you feel something wasn't properly covered. Additionally, you can always go into the comments of this video to leave your thoughts if something wasn't best articulated or a gap was left in the works, which I didn't even notice. I think for the most part I'll be going over people like SCP Explained, TheRubber and Dr. Bob for their misdeeds or overall bad actions, whilst with Raddagher I may cover their pushback with the videos or how they went about poking fun. But of course the two in the title are my main focus, considering that's where everything stems from, and they remain as some of the larger contenders in this field for lazy content. Before dipping into that though, I would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button, and God, it does not get any easier saying that without cringing just a bit. Though, seriously, I greatly appreciate all of those coming to the channel, and especially the influx of those coming to join in after seeing that prior video of mine on the same topic. We're actually really close to hitting 1,000 subs, which means I won't be working for free anymore. Moreover, I'll be cooking up a compilation featuring scares.
Walk out of there.
No, that won't happen. You gotta go outside.
And my better jokes.
Fucking hell.
To boot for a special of sorts, since there is plenty to cover and it'd be cool to cover everything from the start till where we are now. Of course, I'm daydreaming and you're here to see how the formerly mentioned channels have messed up now, if not listing the complaints brought on by you lot. Now then, this is going to be a pretty simple format to follow, since I'm going to place the comment or a simplified version of what's trying to be conveyed in the corner, instead of stop-starting by adding transitions, though chapters will be included to easily find certain questions. I'll go with more common questions or comments, then inch down to more obscure ones as we go on. As such, these sections will likely feel shorter than a proper chapter I would do. That aside, I think most could insinuate that both TheRubber and SCP Explained pander to children more often than not, which I mentioned briefly in my first video, but didn't dive too much into because I didn't think much of it. Thinking more intuitively about it though, it shows in the art style, whether the thumbnail, which can dumb down Gore, if not presenting us with something akin to this. fucking she will touch you. Or it may boil down to the art in their videos instead. Because the SCP Explained is an offshoot of the infographic show, it maintains the art style and unfortunately hinders the appearance of those who want to show off. SCP-096, for example, is the most obvious because of how smooth it is and the lack of details which would otherwise show off how withered or decrepit it is, which usually juxtaposes with the amount of destruction that it can cause if its face is unmasked. The little things are lost to the wind simply because it means they can keep feeding it to the kids who are curious about the content without knowing the full extent. Even then, it invokes a new issue if kids were to get hooked onto SCP content, thanks to those such as TheRubber or SCP Explained, and it comes around to channels which are doing it for the stories rather than forcing out content for views. Obviously, kids will go through the loops of new content or going back to older videos, but if they, perchance, get shown a Mr. Illustrated video in the recommended, then they are going to get a completely different experience with more realistic depictions of gore or violence that leans into the original context more. From there, a child could react in many different ways, whether intrigue or fear, but more often than not, it will lean more so into the negative, let alone how a child could retaliate to being scared. It's just a bad idea that unfortunately happens quite a lot with horror products, though a more common version of this would be with mascot horror, considering how content farms will twist those games to try and get anything out of them. It's just a part of the YouTube landscape now, and the best we can do is identify which is more or less trying to appeal to kids while severing the horror elements in the process. During that explanation, I threw the term content farm around somewhat, and I'll quickly read out a brief definition of what classifies a content farm. A content farm is a company or organization that produces a large amount of low-quality videos, memes, and social media posts, and outlines articles on many different topics. Basically, think Lankybox if you've been subjected to their brain-melting content before. The point of what is made is to be the sheer definition of quantity over quality, and pushing that to the nth degree. Those involved care not for what they are exploiting and usually have some form of team involved, so they can keep pumping stuff out at a quick rate. Now, if we take a look at what TheRubber is doing nowadays, it is simply compilations with content they have already created, with transitions being blunt and simply there to stitch together disjointed videos. Hell, even videos that aren't openly labelled as compilations are simply lying on the surface, such as with this one here, which follows the premise for 5 minutes and 34 seconds before switching up to be completely from the title. Even the content of that short time is without much substance, considering it's a lukewarm ramble about a SCP-500 that tasted weird. But I mean, this just keeps going, as with a random video I reviewed having a host of issues itself. For example, the timeline of young girl SCP-053 vs SCP-973 Smokey is all fucky, considering the art style shifts so much for the characters, the timeline is messy considering TheRubber apparently is getting chased, then the cop car vanishes randomly, but then comes back after the introductions are done for no reason. In such time, TheRubber found SCP-053 on the side of the road, a criminal runs from yonder way and gets sucked under the effects of the anomaly, which typically takes 10 minutes, somehow manages to snap him out of the trance only for SCP-973 to then pull up out of the blue. Minor mistakes being that of the characters saying one thing and not doing it, with the subtitles being wrong as well.
And who might you fellas be? His compatriots, I assume.
It's just also rushed, and that's without picking at SCP inaccuracies as well, and whatever else, whilst this is just with one video. It's just so bad and hard to watch without losing interest, and the voice of TheRubber literally never changes tone and makes me think it's some sort of AI that babbles in a tone that isn't offensive besides being boring. I think it's fair to say that TheRubber is a content farm that recycles old content into compilations, with some of them being veiled behind false titles to try and slip out being caught lacking. Looking at SCP Explained, I'm on the fence about flatly calling them a content farm, considering they do the same with compilations that can cross many hours, but they also do SCP exploration videos that originally got them to their popularity. For SCP-2933, Mr. Scary, they retain the large reuse of backgrounds and overall lazy appearance, but they are a lot more on the money with how they present the SCP itself. The only thing I have to pick at would be the thumbnails because of the clickbait used and how they are a large issue for the SCP Explained channel. Going back to the entry itself, the thumbnail is so very off topic, what with it making the entity look like something out of the Jack Frost bath scene despite it having no relevance at all. Maybe because the entity is on a boat? I don't know. Otherwise, it would be better to have some creepy rusty human on the front instead of this clickbait trap. They don't even get the name right in the thumbnail either. And sure, clickbait is one thing, but they are also reusing parts of the thumbnails in later ones, which, when looking at the size and additional ties to other channels, it would make more sense to create more art to better fit the theme of the video. This could be to save on cash or to keep up with the schedule, but it begins to show when thumbnails keep being duplicated or art sets are being thrown on with minimal changes besides something here or there. There isn't much to say otherwise considering how lackluster it is on top. I've been aiming my sights on our big boys for quite some time now, but someone I noticed popping up often in the comments was Dr. Bob, another SCP content channel. The difference being that Dr. Bob is widely held at a better standard among others on the surface, and whilst there isn't much to comment on, there are a couple things I want to pin down, which may go over people's heads. First of all would be the fact that at one point Dr. Bob created another channel, Animate Games. That would be more so focused on games, and one of their first choices was Five Nights at Freddy's, and the effects of being caught before being stuffed in a suit. However, the problem with such is that Mr. Illustrated had done the exact same thing a whole month before this video came out, using the same exact thumbnail and title for it. This hit a lot harder considering he stepped out of doing just SCP and this was the first video to do such. Obviously, this caused quite the numerous sparks to fly when it came down to things, and after enough shouting from Mr. Illustrated supporters, there was some budging as the voice for Dr. Bob, Joe Cliff Thompson, talked to their company director. Eventually, the video was taken down and everyone rejoiced, though I'm somewhat curious as to the Animate Games channel, due to the large number of subscribers, but overall low view count on most videos. I doubt a vast majority of people went to subscribe from the original channel, and now it's dead in the water, so it's hard to tell. On a lesser note, there are people calling Dr. Bob a content farm as well, with this coming from the fact they post frequently and that they are a part of a larger team that helps make the videos as a whole. They do reuse thumbnails on occasion and have plenty of compilation videos, but they supplement this with a lot of SCP exploration videos as well. From my own viewing of SCP-1630 Human Food Pyramid and SCP-971 Exotic Fast Food Delivery, they provide not only a fair read of the SCP itself, but also provide a story beforehand that builds onto the entity too, so the videos aren't boring clear cuts of what is written on the wiki itself. Realistically, they put the most work in out of the others, even if they are working as a team to create these videos, because there is care put into making these entries more interesting. So, is Dr. Bob a content farm? No. I don't feel that this channel is compared to those like SCP Explained or TheRubber, but I still acknowledge that they have some work to do in order to not feel like they are skirting the border of others viewing them as lazy at the least. Alright, bit of a tangent for a moment there, but a bit of fresh air nonetheless for me. That being said, I will move on to more miscellaneous comments I have seen which didn't really fit elsewhere. First of which being the power scaling being mentioned and how it ruined SCP for some people, since they would constantly be comparing different entities to one another. To play devil's advocate, I can see why people would enjoy comparing the power of, I don't know, SCP-049 the Plague Doctor to SCP-682 Hard to Destroy Lizard due to their different powers and how they interact with each other or those outside of the SCP universe. I'm rather foreign to the idea of power scaling, so I could be missing things here or there about the overall annoyances of such. That being said, I can see why people would be agitated by the constant back and forths on grading the powers of different entities, considering it comes down to people usually using the more popular SCPs in the debates. Of course, this could be particularly annoying in the face of people trying to prop up newer SCPs who are well written or provide newer powers to experiment or write stories around. And there's so many creative minds around the space, considering it makes up a majority of the fanbase, there are bound to be people who overindulge in such by playing things up to benefit the side they favour or getting overly aggressive with their opinions either. Hiya, VincentSkullMan here. I was checking comments recently and noticed this one pop up, which gives me a better idea as to why people are mad about the power scaling stuff. I suppose this would be more like power creep, though. Regardless, it seems like people have issues with newer SCPs being written with more power that makes them ridiculously strong with no draw or interesting story to back this up. Obviously, I can't spend heaps of time reading all the recent articles, but one did stand out to me when scanning through SCP-8850. The premise is an anomaly which can draw anything to life, basically. The issues I can see people having would be that the story is shallow, a popular SCP is shoved into the article for no good reason, and it feels like a lack of detail is present. I'll start from the beginning. SCP-8850 was a therapist whose husband had recently started to abuse them until he left their twins to drown after not supervising them in the bath, to which she killed him with a kitchen knife. Then SCP-049 appears out of the blue and force feeds 8850 a random substance, and now she has anomalous powers for some reason. After that, 8850 starts to terrorize the place of Amesbury, United Kingdom, until being apprehended after Foundation personnel had to use missiles to incapacitate the creatures being drawn to life. Now, I take issue with the story because it feels too short and more or less speedruns the story of an abuse victim by making the husband a cheater, a drunk, an abuser, and overall a big pile of crap, which is crammed into a singular entry that 8850 wrote for some reason. The notice is just confusing as well, because why wouldn't the Foundation just remove the entry permanently, considering she could use it to draw on, and it isn't like taking the paper away will cause a containment breach. It's overly detailed for no reason. It would make more sense for Foundation personnel to find a journal or diary at 8850's old residence, to which could be transcribed from there in shorter entries to build up to the event, which was rushed too. Moreover, I feel as though the Foundation would be more harsh on an anomaly that is this dangerous. Attaching a muzzle and putting some sort of gloves onto 8850 would greatly reduce the chance of a containment breach, since they can't draw nor easily cause harm to themselves. Alternatively, they could make the floor waxed so any liquid runs off it and have a drain in the middle of the room which isn't to be covered at any time, so that if she tries using her blood, then nothing will be able to take form. A key to classification just seems too much for the easy protocol which could be put into use here to stop any containment breaches, let alone giving it an entire site to itself. Not only that, but we don't even know what the creations are made up of, whether it is the material they are drawn on, or the material which they are drawn with, if not a mix of both, and as such, what happens to the drawing itself after coming to life. Then there is the inclusion of SCP-049. They feel jammed in for the sake of the author being able to point at them and be like, hey, they have some relevance to the well-known guys, as if this would throw them into the spotlight. Not only this, but how 049 then gets presented during a cross-testing, as if he wants to fight the Foundation, which doesn't align with his main goal of wanting to cure the pestilence more than anything. That, and he acts as though he can see auras, despite him only really being able to pick up on the pestilence instead of some quote-unquote darkness within the Foundation itself. It's like they took the garbs of the Plague Doctor and put it on someone else. That's without the Foundation being laughably stupid in this scenario, since they know 049 can pull most medical items from his bag, so it would make sense he would have a journal in there as well. The cross-testing would have happened face to face, sure, but they would never have allowed the two to physically be able to interact with one another. Something more akin to a prison visiting booth would have made more sense to avoid that which ended up happening. For some reason, 8850 managed to kill the Foundation staff on site 8850 without it affecting others of likely similar appearance, considering there is no way that she had enough time to draw the people separately and not just one which would kill all of them. This cross-testing could have become an XK event, all things considered, since with the right direction, 8850 could have done the same instant death trick on who knows how many sites, or against who knows how many site directors, researchers, or even political leaders. Imagine if she had done this at Site 19. All's to say that this feels incomplete, with some serious details being missing and some changes which would certainly benefit the narrative for this SCP article, but I must warn you, don't engage that entry with aggression and simply post criticism in their discussion tab if you have something meaningful to say. Don't go spamming that article with nothing to add. Going on to the next comment states, wait, no, it can't be. Old? No, this can't be. I'm 20. What? I'm not old. I'm not an old man. So the comment gets on my case for judging the two channels for not being perfect and saying that they shouldn't put in the full effort as it would be taken for granted. And whilst this person got cooked in their replies, I think it's best to keep in mind that perfection is impossible in nearly all facets of life. Humans can't be perfect, art can't be perfect, and the mind cannot be perfect. Perfection just switches so much in the eyes of the beholder that it can't be nailed down effectively. I know there won't be a perfect SCP channel, but it doesn't mean that a channel with a lot of manpower behind it can't put in the effort to uplift the medium to peaks that a single person wouldn't be able to achieve. If the aim is to squeeze the content dry and drop the husk to one side, then they aren't worth being evolved to begin with. We shouldn't entertain it or defend it because they saw success and followed that whilst crushing the smaller, singular creators in the process. Now, onto Raddagher. Yeah, I know it's Raddagher, but I'm tired. Someone who has actively been in the SCP writing community for a while, but joined YouTube after a while too, in order to provide their thoughts on SCP-related things. For now, they remain on the smaller side due to their inactivity and lack of uploading. That said, they focused on talking about the yays and nays of SCP articles, the SCP authors themselves, and soon enough, the content found to come out. as time went on. The first being CinemaSins-esque, but overall just breaking down the Rubber's interpretation, where a lot of the original jokes get cleaved and all women were removed, which was less than stellar considering it made a joke article bland and boring. The next reviewed one isn't as bad when it comes to the context of the article, however they do remove a lesbian couple because Brain Entertainment PLT, a Malaysian content farm, is obviously homophobic. Then guess what? The third removes both women who are integral to the plot of the article and removes the SCP's bisexuality, with the added addition of whitewashing a Japanese woman to boot. I could make mention of Detective Void, but it is rather inoffensive besides Raddagher making note of the out-of-order events or lack of content from the articles at hand. DV is another content farm, by the way, under the Shankton animation company, just if you were curious. Raddagher is truly doing the Lord's work, and whilst they aren't all too active on main, they put a lot of effort into their Find Us Alive podcast, which I recommend if you're into the space. Before the conclusion rolls, I wish to give one more comment some air to breathe, so just listen as I speak their piece. At Sammy the Anxious Bean says, "What sucks is that Mr. Illustrated, Vulgan, and Dr. Cremarian really do make good SCP content, yet they suffer because the content farms just upload more, and a lot of people that watch them don't read the articles, so they don't know how bad their coverage is. Detective Void and TheRubber, for example, literally have a track record of simplifying and flanderizing everything it covers into being flat-out murder monsters or whatever, straight up excluding people from articles if they're female, and if they literally can't write them out, they gender bend them, and depict almost every character with slight relevance as a white, even if it's made clear in the article itself that they aren't. SCP Explained isn't any better. Big up, my Undertale brethren." Despite the time which has passed and the opportunities passed on by people criticising their craft, the content farms remain as an unending force that repeatedly throws itself at the wall to try to gain whatever is left on the table. All the while, they didn't realise that the relevance is dying and a lot of people are slipping from their grasp, which once kept their little runaround profitable. The SCP market is still being riddled with these crooks, though, as people such as Mr. Illustrated moved on to pursue ideas all horror encompassing, leaving big swingers mostly out of the fight. Dually, I'm glad to see such bubbling conversations under my videos, considering it allowed me to contemplate things I didn't give much thought to, whilst introducing me to other content farms and SCP creators I hadn't been aware of prior. Gave me a chance to chatter in some cases. You already know I'm part with a bit of that too. Thankfully, this will likely be the last time I talk about the SCP community on the side of more controversial things, and I may get to talking in the comments again if I fail to address anything that you may have a burning question about. Again, I want to thank those of you who joined in on the channel after finding me through the original video, getting thrown to the algorithm of all things, which I wasn't expecting in the least. Additionally, there were mentions of it potentially being the resurgence of Lobotomy Corp's popularity, but who knows? I'm no mind of the machines here. In any case, I've been VincentSkullMan, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully.